Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Prasanjit Singh, and today we'll be discussing some DevOps use cases. Particularly, this use case would be a CI/CD pipeline that will be deployed on Amazon EC2. So, what we will be doing is we'll be required to deploy a static website and everything will be from ground up, like there would not be any instances there, so we'll create instances and then we'll be using Ansible playbooks to deploy Jenkins on it, then create the pipeline and then uh, deploy those pipelines to be able to put that static website into a web server. So even installing the web server and getting the server ready would be also a part of this agenda. So for that, basically there are two different repositories we will be using. The simple website repository is a web repo which contains the code for the website. The website would look something like this. This is the code we are going to deploy, and this is a repository which contains the CI/CD pipeline Jenkins file for doing it in a declarative way, and it also has some playbooks that will allow us to deploy the use case. And our problem case is here. Here are certain case stories. If you go into DevOps use cases file, so here we will be adding the use cases. So scenario one is the problem. So we have a static website for a company and website needs to be deployed using CI/CD on Amazon cloud servers. So this is the problem, and basically these are the steps which we will have to follow in order to solve this problem. So we'll deploy two instances in EC2 and we'll install Ansible and Jenkins on those one of those two instances, and on the second instance we'll install Apache web server. So all these installation would be done by applying playbooks, Ansible playbooks of course, and then we'll create the pipelines. So for the pipelines I have shown three different ways to create a pipeline, so that's what we'll be doing. And one of the way would be to use a freestyle, the second one would be to use a scripted, and the third one would be to use a freestyle with Ansible plugins. So we'll try all those scenarios, and finally we'll deploy the website from this repository which I was showing you some time ago. So let's get started then. So first step, deploy two EC2 instances. Okay, so let's begin doing that because we have a lot of things to do today in order to be able to complete this. So let's try to do it fast. So two instances will be required, then we come to install Ansible and Jenkins on it. So at least we will first have to install Ansible, and using the playbooks we can install the other stuff here. Okay, so first thing, go into your EC2 console and launch instances. So we click on launch. This thing we had done in the past, but let's do it again so that you also watch what I am doing. We are using the free tier for our installation and x64, so we select that one, and Ubuntu 18 is our operating system because our scripts are all based on Ubuntu 18. So T2 micro is going to be the instance. Configure instance details. So we move on to the next step now. So here we use the default VPC and everything. We will need two instances, so I just make it two. This one, let's make it a bit more because we are going to install that website and all. So 15 gigs each of hard disk. Next, we can add a tag. That tag says environment is production because we are trying to mimic a production environment. And that is all. Next is our security group. So we could use a existing security group which we had already done, if it is there. Okay, for this zone there wasn't any, so let me create one. So create a new security group, and SSH22, this is by default open, so we will add some new rules for our installations. So custom TCP, I will add 8080 port. Can anyone tell me why this 8080 port is going to be open?
That is the port Jenkins will be active.
Great. Okay. So we are opening the 8080 because we will need Jenkins in one of them. And we are going to open 80 because we are going to have a web server also. Okay. So these three will be enough. Just in case you will do a net data and all, so you can add those ports. This can be done later also. Like, it doesn't mean that once you start a server and whatever ports you have defined, uh, that will be a fixed thing. So tomorrow I can remove Jenkins and close the port also. So you can edit those things later as well. So for the website, we are just adding the port 80 for now. So that will do for us. Okay. So that is all for our security group review and launch. I think we are good. Okay. Now the key pair. We can either choose a new key pair or proceed with the existing key pair. I think we should do a new key pair because in this region I don't have any key pairs in the list. So demo DevOps. So let this be the key. So download it. So we have this key in our laptop. Now let the instances launch and we can check them in the console. Okay, so this is the first step. And once it is while it is getting ready, let's name it so that it will be easy for us. So first is our Jenkins plus Ansible. So this is our server from where we will deploy, and this is the web server where it will be deployed. So this is the destination and this is the source from where we will do everything. Okay, so these two servers are ready, so we can start working on the keys so that we will be able to log into this server. We won't have to log into this server actually, because whatever we will do, we'll do it from here. So this server is just going to be the destination, and that is the beauty of the DevOps. Now just imagine there are 10 web servers, web server 1, 2, 3, because there is high load and they are load balancing the traffic amongst these 10 web servers. So it would not be practical to go to every web server 1, 2, 3, 4 and do the changes. So that's why we only do everything on one server and it propagates to any n number of servers that is there. That is why we use DevOps tools. Okay, so we'll be just working here, but we'll be automatically deploying here. So that is our goal. So let's first start preparing our key. So my key is downloaded in the downloads folder of my computer. So let me just check. DevOps, demo DevOps, I think it was. All right, so this is the key. So first step we have to do is to put the permission to the key as 400 so that it is secure. So that is done. From now on, we are good to enter the server. So go to connect, copy this command right away. This is the Jenkins server. Now Jenkins isn't there, but we'll have Jenkins very soon. So enter this server. Okay, so we are inside the server now. So first task, normally whenever you do a server in production, your first task should be to run this command. It's a good practice, okay? So that you just have everything up to date. Okay, and add a sudo because you are not a root user. So add sudo. Okay, so I'm doing everything like a person would do in a production. So follow the same practices. These are all good practices. That's why I did not become root and do all that stuff. So I prefer to be sudo. Use sudo command here because I'm working in production. For VirtualBox, it is fine. But in production, let's do it in a secure way. So first thing, this is done. Once this is done, always try to install some basic packages if it is already not there. Okay. So what are the basic packages? So do this in any task which you're doing. Okay. Whenever you go into a new Linux server, do these things. Install some packages like telnet. This allows you to check whether other servers have ports open or not. So these are some diagnostic tools. Second is you try to install this one, wget. This is a command to download things from the internet in using a command line. Then install git. This is going to be very important because we will use git clone and all those commands. So at least these three things should be present. Okay, again I'm missing the sudo and say yes, so you get these things installed in your system. All right, so again I clear the screen now. Now my task will be to copy the SSH key to my SSH folder here, so that I'll be able to log into the other servers and run my Ansible scripts. Okay, so .ssh, enter this folder. There is a hidden folder called .ssh and we normally keep our keys there. The folder is hidden so that normally if someone enters the server and does a ls, won't be able to see that. So that's why it's done. So what I'm doing is I am copying the PEM file which I have and keeping it here. Okay, so what I will do, I will add a file and copy the contents of the PEM file which is in my laptop. So cat, it is in my downloads folder, demo DevOps. So this is the key. So just copy the contents of the file and create the key file in this system, paste it. Okay, so this is something you have to do. And next thing is to provide the same permission to the key file, because anywhere you add a key file, always give it 400 so that it is the most secure permission for a key file. So this step is done. Just write cd, so you come back to the home directory. So our first step is done. The server is ready and we have installed the prerequisites. But now we do not have Ansible, we do not have Jenkins. We need Jenkins and Ansible in this server because this is our Jenkins plus Ansible server. So how do we install that? The answer is there in the reference. I have given you this reference links. So the first reference has the answer how to create the CI/CD, that means the Jenkins and Ansible. Second way just has the website code. Okay, so we'll go to this simple CI/CD EC2, this project. Okay, so go to this project. Here it has the steps to do stuff. And what are the steps? There is no other code file here. So only you have a folder called Ansible Playbooks. So these are the playbooks which you have to run to get the things up. Okay. So, but there is a sequence to run it. All right. So what is the sequence? So that is what we'll be doing. So first we'll have to install the Jenkins, and second we'll have to install the web server on the other server using these playbooks, and then we will deploy, okay, the website. So these are the three steps we have to do, but how I am doing it, just note. All right. So first thing I'll do is to run these project. All of these are Ansible playbooks, so I will need Ansible to be installed here. So this is the only thing I'll do manually using the commands, just like I was preparing the server. So installing Ansible is a part of preparing your server, because without Ansible you cannot deploy to other servers, you cannot deploy Jenkins. So the Ansible is the basic thing, like it's the automation tool. So once you have that tool, you can use this tool to automate the other things. So you have to install Ansible manually, and once that is done, you can install the other things. Now in real life scenarios, we even automate this part. How do we do that? We install everything in a new server and create an image of this server. So that comes when you read more on the cloud. So we create that image. So whenever we launch the server, instead of using the base Ubuntu image, we use our image, which already has basic stuff, Ansible, the other things which I installed. So it already has these things. So it is easy to just get started with our commands right away. But you should know what are the things we are installing to prepare a server, so that makes your journey easier. So first of all, without having any repo in place, try to install Ansible and see you are being able to install or not. If you forget the command how to install Ansible and all that, then you can also do another thing. I already had the Ansible notes here. So we had in our learning resources, we had Ansible notes. So you can refer that also if you have forgotten how to install Ansible. So we are using Ubuntu system. So it says that you can install Ansible by this, adding this repo and then apt install Ansible. Okay. So we can just try this command once. And if it doesn't work, then we'll do this sequence together. Just trying if it is already available, we should be right away able to install. Okay. So it is already there. Normally, nowadays, Ubuntu systems have these repos added, like these repositories. If it is not there, then the command will show that Ansible is not available. Then you have to run step 1, step 2, step 3, and step 4. So you can refer this one, but it is only useful when this is not appearing. Like here you can see the project is available here, and it has all these dependencies, and it is saying that if you want yes, if you say yes, we'll go ahead with the installation. So that is it. So let's go back to our original project. Okay, so we'll proceed here after installation of Ansible. Okay, so we have this installed now. How can we verify? We can just run this command to verify Ansible is installed or not. So we can see Ansible is there and we are all good. So now we have Ansible ready. Now we can start running our playbooks to install Jenkins. Next step was Jenkins. First I said we will need Ansible. Using Ansible, we use this playbook to install Jenkins. And after Jenkins is installed, we do our same things like installing the uh, installing the pipeline and then installing Apache and so on. Okay, so next step is going to be clone this repo to that server. So I'm just copying this and I go back here and I write git clone this one. So I have this repo here, simple CI/CD EC2. Let's go inside it. Before we run any playbook, we will do a post-mortem on whatever is there inside that playbook. Okay, so that will make you understand what you're actually running. So we went into this folder and here we see all the playbooks. Okay, so we'll run our commands from here. Next is this step is now done. Servers are ready. Installation is going on. Playbooks have to be deployed. So let's first see what is a playbook and what we have to prepare to run that playbook. Okay. So first we will have to run this playbook, Jenkins install.yaml. What does it do? If you go inside it, you see there are various sections. One is called the hosts, other is called the tasks. This is a simple playbook, one page playbook. It doesn't depend upon any other file. Okay, so whatever is written in is in this one file. Okay, there are other complicated playbooks also which has rules and these kind of stuff. So whenever role is involved, so then a playbook becomes a bit complicated. It sources other things from outside. So you will learn about that on the second part of the Ansible video. Okay, so when you watch that video, you will know what a role is. But a single page playbook is like this. Like this page, if I run this single playbook will just run Jenkins. If I run this, it will install Apache. If I run this, it will deploy the site and so on. So these are the various single page playbooks. Okay, so coming back to this one, what are the various things inside the playbook? First section is the host section. Host section defines what are the various hosts in where this installation will be done. Okay, so we will define the host name where this installation will be done. Okay, the second section is for the tasks. So here we define what we are doing actually. So to install Jenkins, first we are just cleaning all the repositories, doing apt-get update, then we are installing JDK, and then we are adding the repository where we have Jenkins, and then here we are installing the Jenkins, and here we are starting the service of Jenkins. So this is the total thing that will keep Jenkins running. Okay, so once we install this one, so before we can run this playbook, we have to again make some preparations. Okay, what is that? To run a playbook, you have to run it this way: Ansible playbook -i hosts, then the group name where you want to deploy, and the playbook name. Okay, so this is a syntax of running a playbook. So now it will not make any sense to you, but when I run it, you will understand what I'm talking about. So we have to get each of these parts set before we can run this command. Okay, so for now you just understand this is a command that allows you to run a playbook. So if I want to run the Jenkins playbook, what will I write? Ansible playbook -i hosts, the name of the Jenkins and the name of this file. Yeah, you're saying something?
No, Prashant, no.
Okay. So we'll come to that, like what command will run. So first we have to prepare our hosts file. So in Ansible, if you go through the video, to automate anything, we have to first define which destination will be used to automate that task. Okay. For example, here in this repo, we have a hosts.example file. Okay, I'm showing you what is inside that file. See, here you can define your hosts where you want to deploy things using these kind of headings or sections. Okay, so these are also called groups, and under that group you can define where you want to install what. Okay, so in our case, let's prepare our host file. So how to prepare a host file? Copy this host.example and just name it hosts. So if I do a ls, now I have a hosts file. Actually, it is a copy of this host.example file. Now I can change this host file. So demo hosts, and these are the certain things which we had used in our examples earlier. So we don't need it. For today's task, we need two groups. One is the Jenkins server group, other is the web server group. Okay. So we'll need a Jenkins server group and a web server group. In the Jenkins server group, we'll put the Jenkins server IP address. So this is not the Jenkins IP. We will find the Jenkins IP from AWS. This is the Jenkins IP. So I'm copying it. I'm using the private IP because, as I said earlier, if you are in your own VPC, you can go through internally, and that is more secure and fast. So I'm adding the Jenkins IP here. And these things are additional parameters that you add here that defines the username. So we are using Ubuntu server, our user is Ubuntu, so we are good. Here you have to define your key file name. So our key file name is what? It is inside .ssh folder, and the name was demo devops.pem. So whatever is your key file name, do the same here. This is the Python interpreter name. So if this Python 3 is available, then it will try to use the Python 3. These things are optional. Like you can even comment this, remove this Python interpreter, because by default Ansible will use its own interpreter. But I have just added this just in case you need these things in future. Okay. So first task is done. We know which server is our Jenkins server. We had added the IP. Now which server or servers is going to be our web server? We have to add that IP there. Okay, so which server is our web server? This one. The IP of the web server is this. Paste it. Paste the other things as it is, because we are using the same Ubuntu and the same key and everything else. So just copy the rest of the line. So this is our Jenkins server. This is our web server going to be. And if we have multiple servers, say we have another server 172.x.y.z, so we can add those servers here. Just do a new line and add the IP addresses. Okay, whatever be the IP addresses, you can add them. So now we have just one web server, so we are just putting one line. So if you add 50 lines here with 50 different IPs, so it will install the web servers on all those 50 together. Okay, so that is why it makes your things fast. So for demonstration, we are just using one server. We could have used many servers also. Once we are done with this, you can also try it with more in our next scenarios, which I will provide you. Sometimes I'll give you 2 or 3 servers to do. So you will try that. Okay, first get very comfortable with what is being done today, because this is going to sink in, like it will take some time to sink in. Okay, so Jenkins is this server where Jenkins is going to be installed, and this is the server where web server is going to be installed. First define that and save the file. So we have a host file loaded and we have everything in place. So let's first run a simple command to check whether the host file is working correctly or not. Okay, so what is a simple command to do these kind of tests? You can run an ad hoc command for that. Okay, so that takes us to our Ansible notes again. To see what an ad hoc command is. I had told you there are some ad hoc commands using which you can check whether your hosts are available or not. So this is one command which you use to check whether your servers are reachable or not. Okay, so I'm going to use the same command. So -i hosts. So I want to ping all my hosts just to see whether they are reachable or not. Okay, so let's see what happens. So for the first time, it will ask you yes or no because it is not able to reach those servers. Run it a couple of times because we added yes for the first time, but we could not add yes for the other one. Okay, so run it 2 times. We have 2 servers, so we run it 2 times and write yes. So once we did the yes here, now we do a ping again. Now we are able to get a success from both the servers. So this is a test. This is not something real. This is a test to check whether both the servers are successfully reachable or not. So we have both the servers successfully reachable. So now we are ready to run our playbooks. Okay, so let's go back to our CI/CD.
Prasanjit,
Yes.
I have, so can't we add these host IP addresses in the Ansible folder where we have installed
Yes, we can. Yes, we
the
can.
host.cfg?
Yes, we can do that also. Like
Okay.
you are saying etc Ansible
Yeah, yeah.
and host.cfg. So we can do that here also, like in this
Okay.
ansible.cfg
Okay.
and in this hosts also. But
Yeah.
I would advise not to do that. Why I'm telling you, like in a production environment, we don't want to hard code anything anywhere. Okay, why?
Okay.
For example, you have a project, this one. You have this project you are working on. There is a CI/CD website you have to create, and for this project they have told you the web server IP is say x.y.z, and you created your hosts and added it to the file you are saying, like in etc Ansible hosts. So you add all these things here. Okay, so what you did, you added web servers, and here you added your IP address for the web server. And next time another project came, and another DevOps engineer also uses this same Ansible server, because in companies you share the same servers with other engineers also. You don't have your own Ansible server in a company. For
Yeah.
testing out, you do it yourself. So that guy, when he comes, maybe he is doing something on his web server, and he removes your server IP and adds his one, or he adds his server IP under your server IP. And when next time you run your project, the web server you install is getting installed in his server also. So then he will ask
Okay.
you, you have run something and you have disturbed my server. So that's why we do not use the global file. So that file inside etc is called the global file. If you do any change there, it will apply to all the Ansible
All the
servers.
servers, yeah.
So we keep a local host file in our own repo, this one. So we created a host from this host.example. So when I run it, it will only be in my playbook. So my playbook will run, others will not know about it, like what I did or where I deployed. So it will only be restricted to my repo. So that's why it's a good practice. But while learning,
Okay.
you can use that one also. But why to learn that way when you're eventually not going to do that in a production? So better to
Yeah.
have everything in one place. So you check out your code, you have all the things in one place and use that one. Okay.
Okay.
So this hosts is done, and we have done this ping test to check whether everything is up or not. So now we are ready to install the Jenkins playbook. So let's open the Jenkins playbook once again. And also I'm trying to show you the contents of the host file again. So if I want to install Jenkins playbook, so I will want it to install on the Jenkins server. Okay. So this name is called the group name. So if I have 2 or 3 Jenkins servers, so I will have IP addresses under it. So now I have one, so one IP is here. But the group name defines whether the playbook, where the playbook will be applied. So just copy the group name and check whether the same group name is there in the Jenkins playbook or not. So this is the playbook. I'm opening it. So it's fine. Hosts is Jenkins. So if it wasn't, then I will just paste the same thing which I copied here. I would have done that. So, but it is fine. So this is good. Now, how to run this playbook? There are a number of ways to run playbooks, but the common syntax is like this. What we do for production is like this. But just don't copy and paste it. Just see what it is. Whatever is your inventory file name and path, you can provide it. So we are on the same folder where host file is, so we don't give any path, it's host. -L is the group name. So in our case, our group name is this, Jenkins. Yes, so we write Jenkins. Then is the playbook name. So my playbook name is Jenkins install.yaml. So this is it. And let's run it and see what happens. Rest of the things, sometimes we also add the key and the username and everything. Like you can do -u Ubuntu, so it will use the user and all that. But it is not a good practice to write the username, password, key name, everything here. So that's why we included all those things in the host file already. So we told that user will be Ubuntu and key will be here. So we don't have to write that anymore. But if you haven't written it here, then it will fail and ask you the username is not there. Then you can give it -u also this way. So I have added that example also, like you can also do it this way. And what does this mean? Some commands have to be run as sudo. So in order to run as sudo, you have to give this. But in my playbook, which I have given you this example, I have added all that inside the playbook. Because if you look at the Jenkins install, you will see I have added this sudo and all inside the playbook. So whenever it will need to install something or need a sudo access, it will automatically get it from the playbook instead of applying it on the command line here. So it is not a good practice actually to write everything on the command here and make it a long command. You should keep it crisp, just the name of the inventory file, group, and the playbook name. Everything else should be defined in the playbook. Then it is a good playbook. Okay, so we have everything set. Now let's run this and see whether it's installing Jenkins or not. So it will take some time because everything is being done from scratch. And if we run into some errors, then we have to again fix it. But hopefully there won't be any errors because we have new servers. So there is no problem there. So once Jenkins is installed, then we have to set up the Jenkins, like installing the modules and plugins and all those stuff. So that has to be done manually because that is the first time and one time thing. Once the Jenkins is there, next pipelines will be automated. So we are just trying to do it one single time and see. All right, so while this is going on, let me tell you one more thing. Last time we installed Jenkins, it was on a Docker container. Like you remember, we started Jenkins with Docker run Jenkins and then used it. So here we are just installing Jenkins directly on a server. Okay, because in production we normally do it this way. Using Docker also you can do it on production, but then it becomes a bit risky in the sense that the files and folders are not persistent. For example, if your EC2 instance reboots, then the Docker dies and your all the files and everything will go away. Next time you remove everything and start Docker again, you won't get it unless you have a Docker volume setup and all that. So better once you learn Ansible, because at that point of time you did not know Ansible, so I installed that using a Docker container. Now that you know Ansible, just use this playbook to install Jenkins. Okay, so our playbook did the apt-get update, and then it installed OpenJDK, and then it installed Jenkins, and now it is ready. Okay, so that part is done now. So let's go to that server and see whether Jenkins is running or not. Where is our EC2? Here. So this is the public IP. Because we'll be opening from the browser, we will need the public IP and 8080. Okay, so it's asking for the initial password. We know these steps, we have done it earlier. So we go back to the server, do a cat and get the contents. Okay, I'm forgetting sudo again. So this is the file and here we are. Okay, so here we are in the installing the plugins. So I will choose, last time we installed suggested plugins, but now that you are a bit, I mean, you know what is going on. So let's try the custom mode. Okay. So here are the normal plugins which are used. So I will add some more plugins. So install. So now this will install all the packages. Okay, so the user is admin, password, let's make it DevOps 123. So we have just given a sample. Okay, let's make it administrator. Okay, so it says that this is the Jenkins URL. We are already there anyways. Finish. Okay, so we are in, we can create new jobs here. We can also log out and log in as administrator, whatever we want. So we are already here, we can create jobs. But before we create the job, we have to do one thing. Like first we have to know from where we will get the code from. So then we will be able to do the pipeline. And we'll run it, we'll fail a couple of times so that I'll point you out why it is failing, and then we'll fix that step. Like we will not fail in the CI part, because CI is just pulling the code from the repository. So that in this case, because no build is involved as this is a static site. But in the CD part, we will fail. Okay, I'm telling you beforehand. Why we'll fail, we'll see that when it comes and we'll fix it. And when you do it, then you do it that way so that that error is avoided. Because I do not want to just make it succeed in one go, then you will miss the point. Okay, so let's create a new job. And yes, one more thing. Here I am creating a freestyle project now, but everything else applies. Like we can do the same thing as a declarative pipeline. So you can go through the previous video again, do the same thing in a declarative. So I will add that scenario and give it as a homework to you later on when you are doing those scenario based. So it's the same thing, like doing the same thing in a freestyle project is writing the script and doing it with a declarative uh, is just another functionality which you already learned in the previous one. So you go through that and see how you can do it. I could have done that as a declarative here, but I'm not doing it because today we are trying to learn the entire flow and we don't want to complicate it by adding more and more complicated scripts here. So because this part we already know, we can do it in a freestyle, we can do it in a pipeline, we can do it as a multi-branch and all that. But that can come anytime. Today we are trying to learn more about the Ansible and the CD part, how to deploy using Ansible and also with Jenkins. Okay, so here first let's name our pipeline. That will be the simple CI/CD. Okay, and we use the freestyle project. So that will bring us to the form where we define the job. So we write simple CI/CD pipeline, discard old builds, make it 10, like 10 jobs will be saved. Source code management is Git. What is our project for that? Simple website project is this. So just copy it and put it there. Okay, you won't need a credential here. Okay, one important thing, when you do it, try to do it as a private repo and add credentials also. Okay, so that will be another homework. I'll add these points later when I give you those homeworks. So how to add those credentials? Just click here, click on Jenkins. It will ask you for the username password of your GitHub, because from there it will bring your code, right? So here you will add your GitHub username password and write some description here. ID, no need to do anything, just add it. Or you can just put a simple name to identify this credential. You can write my GitHub repo or something like that. My GitHub ID. So, and your username password of GitHub and add. So once you do that, then in this drop down you will see your credential and choose it. Only then you will be able to check out if it is a private repo. Okay, so once we do that, I can also show that to you, but it's just the matter of adding the ID here. So it's no rocket science there. So here we are adding this and the master, because we just have one branch here. So this step is fine. So this will only bring the code to the Jenkins server, but our goal is to deploy the code to the web server. So how will that happen? So we'll do that in a while. Okay, so this step is done. Now if I run the job will just check out the code into the Jenkins server. So I'm starting the build. So this job is a success. So we got the code here. Okay, so this step is done. Like the CI part has succeeded, but we have to deploy the same thing on the Ansible on the web server, this code. So that will be the deployment part. So how do we do that? Okay, so to do that, we will have to prepare our Jenkins user to be able to run Ansible script. So in order to do that, there is a prerequisite. So we will need our Jenkins user to be able to SSH into the destination hosts or the web server in this case. Because as I said earlier, Ansible uses SSH as the agent to log into different servers and do its tasks. So if we are running the playbook using Jenkins, so Jenkins user should be able to SSH into the web server and then install Apache or run the service or deploy the code and so on. So when you do a CI/CD pipeline, so the Ansible playbook that will run from the Jenkins, that should be able to be deployed on the web servers. So there should be a SSH connectivity there. So the first prerequisite and in this matter the only prerequisite is to add the SSH key to the Jenkins user, so that somewhere in the Jenkins to place it somewhere in the Jenkins user location where Jenkins user can access it, so that Jenkins can use that key to log in into the endpoints. So to do that, a simple way would be just to copy the contents of this key file and then put it in the same location for the Jenkins user in the home directory .ssh folder. So what I'm doing, I'm logged in as the Ubuntu user, and we already had our key under the ssh directory .ssh directory. So I'm just copying the contents of the ssh pem file, and now I will log in as, first I'll escalate myself as root user, and then I'll log in as Jenkins user, and then I will create a Jenkins .ssh directory for the Jenkins user if it is already not there. I mean, this step is just an optional step. Like, I'll run this command. If that directory is already there, then it will obviously not create a directory. If not, it will create a directory. So it was already there. So next is to create the same file there, demo devops.pem. Be careful with the spellings because all the scripts has this uh, file name mentioned, and if it's wrong in spelling, then it won't work. So I open this file and paste the contents which I copied, and you can place this in any way. Actually, you can just use the copy command or do anything, so it's up to you, or you can directly upload it somehow if you want, but one has to be very careful with the key files. It should not be compromised, so I advise you to place it in the .ssh directory and then give it a 400 permission. All right, so this is it. The prerequisite is done. Now we have our Jenkins ready and we have our Jenkins user ready to run the Ansible scripts. Now let's add those steps here to do the next part using our pipeline. Okay. So, but before we deploy the website, we have to do our web server deployment, right? So, as the same Ubuntu user, we have to now run our script to install uh, the web server. Okay. So if you look at the files here, you have this Apache install script. So this is the script which will allow us to install the web server on the other server. So once we do this, this final script will be run by Ubuntu, by Jenkins, sorry. So let's copy this. And in the group, we add web server because we are going to run it for the web server. And the playbook name to install the web server is this, Apache install. Okay, it did not match because we had a mistake in this file here. The host name was not Apache, the group name was web server. All right, so let's run it again. So this will install Apache on the Apache node. Then we'll go to the Apache node and verify that Apache is working there. Then we'll use the Jenkins to deploy the website and then see it is working there or not. And if there are any challenges, then we'll solve it again. Okay, so when the Apache will be installed, we will be able to see that in this IP address. Okay, it's there. So that means our playbook is still working, but it has already installed actually. See, the playbook is up now. So we had all the 5 steps which were successful, nothing failed, and all that is done. So we have our Apache web server ready on our third server, like on the second server. So this is ready, but the website is not there because the website step hasn't been run. So let's add a build step here. Choose execute shell. Now we will do all the steps that is required for Jenkins to do. Okay. So the step for this is to run the playbook called deploy site.yaml. This playbook, what it does, let's check. This playbook does the same thing. It cleans everything and checks whether Apache is there or not. This is just a double check. Actually, Apache is there. We already installed it. But this just checks. Just in case Apache has been uninstalled or something is wrong, it installs it again. It checks whether Apache is running or has been stopped. So just in case Apache is not running, it runs it because Ansible maintains the state also. So if it is not running, it will run it again, start it. And this is the actual thing that is happening in this particular step. So what it does, it creates a folder called website and puts our code there. Okay. And checks out this code inside that folder. So we can also physically verify that. To do that, let's also get into our web server to see where it's checked out the files so that you will know, because normally you won't have to, as I said, you won't have to log into the web server ever, but you have to know the internals also, like what is working, what is happening in that server, where the files which you are checking out going, and so on. So SSH, sorry, the username is Ubuntu, right? So the key name is, it's in downloads folder, and the key name is demo, and the username is Ubuntu @ IP address. So this is our web server. The web server files are normally present in var www html folder. Okay, so let's see what is there now. Now there is a dummy index.html file. This is which file? This is this file which we are seeing here now. If you want to check, if I remove this file, that website will vanish. Okay, so we don't see anything now. So our website will come into this location. So we'll verify first and then do it. But for that to happen, this script has to run properly. Playbook has to run properly. Okay. So what is the command that we have to add in the pipeline? It is this. Right. So here we are. This is the command that would run the playbook and deploy the site in our web server. But for this command to run, we have to be on the correct location. So that location is this. This is where our playbook is located. So we have to put this as the path. In fact, this is the path. We should not have to put the entire path once again, and because we are already checking out this repository, and we just do a cd ansible playbooks to go into the location where the playbook is located, and then this should be it. So once we do this and deploy, then our deployment is going to work fine. So apply and save it, and then we go for the run. All right, click on build now. So here we are, the playbook has started to run, and it has succeeded. So that is how we do this deployment with a simple pipeline. All right, so to sum up, if we want to deploy using the CI/CD pipeline on EC2, and we use Ansible for the creation of the endpoints and deployment part. So in order to do that, there are basically three ways to do it. We have tried one of the ways, that is this one, the freestyle job. So let's just go through it once just to revise what we did, and then we move on to try the other two ways. That would be, one of them is using a declarative pipeline or using a scripted pipeline. The third way is to use a plugin to call the Ansible. So there are multiple ways actually. Here we just so in the first way, what we did, we created a freestyle pipeline, and we set up the job, set up the log rotation policy. Here we pointed to the simple CI/CD EC2 git repository here, so which is this one, and this repository basically has this Ansible playbooks. So these playbooks run in sequence. The first one ensures that the Apache is installed in the destination node or not, and then this playbook deploys it actually. So this playbook is something which gets the entire thing done, deploy site.yaml. So this playbook first checks Apache is present or not. If it is there, if the service is running or not. If the service is running, then it checks out the code from the uh, a particular service and a particular repository, and then puts it onto the destination. So that is how simply it does the CD part, or the continuous deployment part. So we mentioned that URL for the Git repository here, branch here, and then this is the most important part. In the build phase, we use a shell script, like we execute shell, and the first thing we do is we log in into the directory where the playbook is, and we set up this variable. This is just to avoid getting errors uh, for SSH host key checking. If you are logging into a new server for the first time, it might ask for a prompt, but since this is a Jenkins job where we would not be allowed to have any prompts here, so if we set up this variable Ansible host key checking equals false, then we would not have to uh, write yes that this is a trusted host and so on. So we are just skipping that by writing this as false, and this is the command that is actually doing the trick. Ansible playbook -i hosts, and this is the group where you want to deploy, and this is our playbook path, or the script that we are going to run. So that is all with this job. So once we save this and execute this job does its work perfectly well. So let's just try it one last time and see whether our website is coming up on the host or not. So here, if we go through the console, we see that it checks the service, Apache is running, and then deploys the app, and the play is over. So if we want to see the website, we go to the web server. This is the IP address of the web server, and we had kept the website in a location called /website. So here we have this page being displayed. So we are now done with the first type of simple CI/CD pipeline on EC2, where we used Ansible to do the deployment, but we called Ansible from a direct shell. Like we used this Ansible playbook command and called it from the shell. Okay, and this is the uh, one of the ways in which you can do it. Now if you go back and want to do this using a Jenkins file scripted pipeline, so this is the job and how it would look like. So let's go to the configuration and look at what this one is. So the rest of the things are similar, but the only change here is, instead of choosing this job as a normal job, I mean freestyle job, we choose a pipeline job. So we get this option, and here we choose the pipeline script. Alternatively, you can choose pipeline script from SCM. So it will pull the code from the source code management. All right, so here it doesn't appear at this point, but once we do a checkout, a dummy checkout in the second phase, it will come out, and then you can mention the path to the Git repository. So if we choose that, and we say that Jenkins file is the file which contains our scripted pipeline, so then it will pull this and use it for the deployment. So here also the steps are essentially same. Here you have your repository from where you get your checkout of your code, and then finally you go to a stage where you build this. Okay, so that's very simple. Let's see it in action then. So here it is, we apply it and we run it. First run will be a dummy run because it doesn't have a SCM uh, displayed yet. So now if we go to the configuration, we will see that we have a script from Jenkins where Jenkins file can be sourced from a Git repository. So now we have to put the Git repository URL here. So what is the Git repository URL for this? We can just copy it from here and put it in the repository URL section. It's a public repo, so we don't have any credentials here, and the file name is Jenkins file where the script is. So you can refer to the previous videos on CI/CD and how to do a scripted pipeline and declarative pipeline. So we have already covered that. So we are doing the same thing here just to see whether it can run an Ansible script as well or not. Alright, so now we are going to build this again, and then we'll see how it pans out. If everything is fine, this pipeline should succeed, because it's just the same pipeline. Only thing is we have made it a scripted pipeline. So I click on the build and let's follow the build logs. So here we are. First of all, it checked out the code, and then it entered the Ansible playbooks directory. It has started the play and finally succeeded. So we have the same website deployed. So if everything is fine, it's deployed. So that is how we do it in a scripted pipeline method. So to come back again to it, here we have the Jenkins file. So now once we set up the scripted pipeline, it will get the code from this Jenkins file and do the deployment. So it's that simple. Next is the third method by which we can do it. Using this method, we can do away with the uh, Ansible, using the Ansible playbook command in the shell mode. So we can do it in a more easier way by using a plugin called an Ansible plugin. So it is your preference how you would like to actually do the deployment. If you want a simple freestyle method, you can use the first method which I showed you, and simply write the code in the shell block. If you are good at scripting, then you can use the scripted method. That's more professional. The third method is using an Ansible plugin if you do not want to use the shell method. But actually, under the hood, the plugin does the same thing which you are running using a shell. So plugin is just a wrapper on the top of it. So it is below that layer, it is actually calling the Ansible commands and doing the things. So anyways, let's move on and see how this part of the deployment works. So how to get a Ansible plugin based pipeline ready. So for that, the first thing you have to do is to install the plugin. So we go to manage Jenkins and choose this manage plugins. So here you click on available plugins, and then you can search on the Ansible plugin. So you can just write Ansible and hit enter. So here we see Invoke Ansible ad hoc commands and playbooks, and there is another plugin called Ansible Tower. So we are going to use just a simple Ansible plugin, install without restart. Okay, so the plugin is installed already now. Alright, so now we are done with installing the plugin. So let's create a job and see how we can invoke the plugin and how we can do various settings before we will successfully be able to deploy the same job. So I click on new item. Again, this will be a freestyle project. So let's first name it CI/CD Ansible plugin. So just to define the job. So it can be any name actually, but this is what we can go with. and we choose freestyle project and select OK. So we can write trying out with the Ansible plugin. Alright, so discard old builds. This is a good practice that I keep doing, so I always do this. And repository URL, it will be our same old repo URL from here. Paste it on the repository URL box, and here we are. Now build triggers and all are fine, we don't have to do it. Here in the build phase, earlier we used to select this execute shell, but we don't want to do it this time. So that's the reason we'll choose invoke Ansible playbook. So we will invoke a playbook using the plugin, using this option. This option would only appear when you install the plugin. So that's what we did in the previous step. So the playbook path. So this will be pretty simple. We'll put the path from here. We know the playbook is in Ansible playbooks, and so the path will be this Ansible playbooks slash the name of this playbook is deploy site.yaml. Alright, so here we are. Then inventory file, this is important. So we'll have to mention the inventory file, or we can if it is already there mentioned in the host section of your file, then you do not have to do anything there. So it is up to you. So you remember in our playbook we had already mentioned this host section, that web server is going to be our destination group, and when someone goes to the host file, will find the web server destination group, and from there we'll pick up the IP. But we have to just name like what is our host file list and where it is. Okay, so here we can either put the inventory host path or a list of the host IP addresses or the host names. So for us it will be easy to put the path to the inventory. So it will be in the same folder and the file name is hosts. So we are referring to this file, Ansible playbooks hosts. This contains the IP address of our destination host. So this is fine. Subset no, not required in this case, because we already have that mentioned in our playbook. Otherwise here you could write like which subset you're referring to, like web server or whatever. Okay, so whenever you are in doubt of because these plugins are all maintained by the plugin provider, so here they provide you the snippets, like what is the pattern you want to do, and here you can see some examples from the uh, original plugin provider. So that is fine. So far so good. Now here is one important place. Here you can mention what credentials will be used to log in. Okay, so if you want to use this, then you will have to add the SSH keys here. All right, or you have to add your vault credential accesses. Vault is in Ansible is a repository where you can store your keys and secrets. Okay, but for our use case, we have already mentioned the key and credential details in our uh, host file, that we have a key which is present in .ssh and so on. So we would not need to define that here any longer. So in a way it is secure, so anyone has access to Jenkins will not be able to actually see what the credentials are and all that. But in case you do not have that defined, you can use this plugin to define it here as well. Similarly, we can take on sudo and other stuff, like if you want to become a sudo user, what is your username? So in that case it should be ubuntu and so on. If you want to become root, then what will be your become user? So it should be root, and so on. So all those things are also mentioned in our playbook, so we will not have to redefine them in this plugin. If you look at this, you will see become user and all these settings are already there. So wherever root level credential, access levels or permissions are required, that is already set in our playbook. So if you do a playbook this way, then you would not have to do this. And let me tell you here, if you want to know more about vault credential and credentials, I'll be creating a complete masterclass style of Ansible. So that will be a series of videos which will only specifically be concentrating on various Ansible modules, plugins, deployment types, and lots of other things. So it will be primarily focusing uh, with a deep dive to Ansible. So you can follow that video later on once it appears, and then you can learn more on this. But for now, if you want to do it without a shell and invoke a Ansible playbook, do it this way. We have all the settings set, and credentials we do not need to do it because, as I said, we already have them covered in the playbook and the host file. So that is all we have to do. Save and apply the settings. Now let's build the job and see what happens. So here, if we follow the logs, we can see the checkout has been started, and then we have already have the Ansible uh, playbook being invoked by the plugin, because we did not write this command, the plugin itself did it, and we have a success here. So the job succeeded and the website was already there. If there was any change in the website, then it would have come across here. Okay, so this is how you do it using a plugin. So try all these three methods yourself, and look forward to the Ansible complete video that will come in soon if you want to learn more on Ansible. But for now, this session or lecture was basically done in order to tell you how you can create your infrastructure on EC2. Number two, how you can set up your Jenkins server and Ansible and a web server using Ansible scripts, and then going further, how you can set up a simple CI/CD pipeline to deploy a website on a particular server. Okay, so these were the three objectives, and we have completed doing them. So that is all for today's session. Have a good day and keep learning. Thank you.